the cultural significance of what you helped to accomplish at Pleaser Dow with the securitization of this famous NFT that made headline news across all these major publications around the world, to say that that's not going to be a culturally significant event and have some persistence in value, I think is ignorant. So I think it will. The challenge is how much in terms of valuation as an investor, you know, but the reality that it has cultural significance, and the cultural significance is what drives value with, say, artwork. I mean, that to me is a slam dunk.
We fractionalized and sold X percentage of that piece to a community, and that community, in our hopes and in our eyes, is going to continue to stick around and build additional layers of product of what it means to be kind of a part of that community, and what it means to be a member of like this club of people that believe in kind of like the mimetic value of this piece and what it stands to, like what it stands for them, right? So does the Mona Lisa have that? Maybe, I don't know, but it's definitely not on a Discord, and it's definitely not like a super active community that's constantly building and like getting together and like figuring out how to like continuously add value to what they're doing, and kind of driving that mission forwards.
My name is Rishi Daranani, and I'm the CEO of Weequal Capital. We're excited to have Juan Pablo Dulanto on our Weequal Capital podcast today. And he's going to talk about two transformational blockchain technologies. First one is decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs for short, which are a new form of organization governed by rules written within a blockchain. The second are non-fungible tokens, which are exchangeable like Bitcoin, but few and often only one are produced. They're mainly photos, videos, audio, and digital files that use blockchain technology to establish digital proof of ownership. They're commonly referred to as digital art. So a little bit about our guest. Juan Pablo Dulanto is part of Pleaser Dao, an organization of NFT collectors and artists that buy and fund a collection of NFTs with a significant cultural importance. One noteworthy piece of within Pleaser Dao's gallery is a piece by Edward Snowden. His piece is called Stay Free. It's an NFT titled Stay Free. We're also joined by Vishal Daryanani, the COO of Weequal Capital, and now the COO of Weequal Group. We're also joined by Ross Hutton, a valued member of Weequal Capital, who serves as an executive advisor to our team, and our beloved Prince, who represents the Weequal Punks, our team of developers in Nigeria, coding our DAO. And last but not least, we're joined by Joseph McPhail, also known as Mr. Weequal. He's the CEO of Weequal Group. And now ready to have this discussion and hear your thoughts, Juan Pablo. So let's get started.
Yeah, well, let me go ahead and ease him into this, because when I first talked to him, he's like, "Hey man, this is just gonna be a casual discussion, right?" So we can ease it down a little bit, but we did want to try to provide some more background for the school. I actually invited Weequal School to join the discussion. So our theme next week is going to be on art and non-fungible tokens. So this is one of the things I love about having a learning community that's focused on like investing and technology, but also looping in the families, looping in the kids. And man, would it be cool if we get some of these kids like selling some NFTs? I think that'd be so much fun. But the two big things that I wanted to chat about today with you is really just high level philosophy. So when I first started talking to you about DAOs, I think you mentioned it. I was thinking about it. I thought I was aware of it. And then I really just dove in, and man, did I dive in hard. And so to a point that it was frustrating to members of the team, because we like had one plan, then we had another plan, and then I'm like, no, we are doing a DAO. And a lot of that came after my conversation with you, so it's your fault. All right. So anybody that's not happy with the Dow, it's just you just blame Juan. Um, but and then of course, I mean, you're a thought leader in that space, but of course, I mean, you work at Pleaser Dow. You're one of the top people there. You helped to operationalize what was headline news on, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, the securitization and sale of that NFT you mentioned earlier. So basically, we're here to listen. We may ask some questions, but we just want you to pontificate on your thoughts of the future of blockchain, but especially the implications of DAOs and NFTs. Maybe you could kick it off just by talking about what DAOs and NFTs are in simple terms for folks in the school. But then, yeah, just go crazy, man. Share your thoughts.
Okay, cool. So I guess we can start off with DAOs. And, I think as anybody here knows, DAOs stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And I think that, they've been around for a while, but just in the last maybe year or 6 months, you're starting to kind of see different applications for them or different uses that are, a lot of people are rallying behind. And kind of, I think that a big part of this is, it's hard for me. I mean, it's the best way that I've explained it to other people that maybe don't know absolutely anything about DAOs is it's kind of like similar to a co-op, but on chain. As far as, it's kind of a type of entity structure that you may have seen in the past through kind of like what cooperatives have done in the past. But the fact that with technology now it enables anyone from anywhere in the world to basically set up a DAO and kind of like a matter of hours, I think is just something that is super breakthrough and is going to enable a lot of creators, builders, to basically start spinning out DAOs for different uses, right? I mean, I think right now we're seeing a lot of like the first layer of DAO applications. Obviously before Pleaser DAO, there's a lot of DeFi protocols that operate as DAOs, as decentralized autonomous organizations. But you're starting to see a new use case with organizations like Pleaser DAO, where basically DAOs are enabling shared ownership over different assets where, maybe, to give you an example, there's currently now a DAO that's trying to buy an NBA sport together. And kind of the idea is I alone cannot afford to buy an NBA sports team. But maybe if I can put together 500 or 1,000 equally passionate people into this crazy idea, then maybe together we can buy an NBA team. So I think that's kind of one example, or like at a very high level of what you're seeing happening with DAOs right now. And it's kind of being enabled by where technology is today, right? Like for a lot of DAOs, as they're getting started, it's kind of just, a community of, crazy passionate people that kind of have this same interest or vision that they share. And through the blockchain, they can enable basically decision making and voting on the blockchain to make decisions and kind of drive a DAO forward. So it's a little bit different than, I come from the startup world prior to this, and I spent, over a decade building startups myself, working as an investor for different venture accelerators and, venture capital firms. And in that world, I think that we're used to seeing centralized power in the form of founders, whether that be 1 or 4 or 5 founders or however many it may be, that can basically make all the decision making around their organization and how to drive it forward. And with that, I think comes like speed and velocity to execute, which I think is really great, like something that comes from the startup world. But with DAOs, you don't necessarily have that, in the sense that, sometimes it can feel like maybe like overly consensus seeking, or having like a board of directors of 50 to 60 people that you have to respond to. So that's like, I think also at a very high level. But I mean, personally, I'm super excited with what's happening with DAOs. I'm super excited with how early we are with the technology, and just to kind of see these organizations that are community driven, where basically, I think it's kind of like the future, right? Where if people are properly incentivized, I think we can build things that are bigger than things that were built in the Web 2 world. So that's kind of what excites me about it. And I think we're still in the very early stages. I think that there's still not a lot of tooling for running DAOs, and people that are creating and building these DAOs, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, right? And unanswered questions around how can you have that same speed of execution as you have in kind of like the more traditional Web 2 startup model, but within this DAO like framework where you are also capitalizing on the collective like brain power or connection power, or having 50 members that add value in different ways. So I mean, happy to kind of like take this conversation in whichever direction you guys see fit, and kind of start asking questions to kind of help me like go in a particular direction.
Yeah, definitely. Would anyone here have any questions? So we
Yeah,
can start
well,
off?
I'd love to open this up to Prince here shortly, but I just want to point out a few things that we're considering doing since jumping off the deep end and looking at all the possibilities. So we did a podcast maybe 3 weeks ago. I think it was titled Daos, and how the price of collaboration has dropped to zero. So there were so many frictions and costs associated with collaborating with people around shared interests, around a common goal. And one of those was trust. That was one of the biggest ones. It wasn't the only one, but that was huge. It wasn't, but DAOs are more than just trustless. I think that's part of what makes this so amazing, is that it enables anybody through this democratic process to also propose ideas. And that gets to your point that you just made about how pretty much everybody who wants to contribute can signal that they can add value to a community or an organization, right? And as long as they get some buy-in and support, they can just take initiative. And so you essentially have a nearly flat organization where, of course, there are folks that own shares in what the DAO allocates to, but the opening of that initiative, where you don't have to ask permission to even have a voice, that is essentially Wequal Group. And that's the part that shook me. The part that shook me and got me obsessed with DAOs is that I'm looking at the structure and organization, and I'm seeing that the way that I've been trying to grow Wequal Group has been an organization in which it's not about like me and what we're doing. It's an enabling platform for people that want to learn by doing and create, right? Whether it's a school or a startup incubator, or people that wanted to, do investing, but they do it by, publishing and talking about it and creating something while they're learning, right? So the more I learned about it, the more I realized that this is like kind of my whole life now, right? That's why I'm crazy obsessed over it. So I'd love to hear your reactions to that, but then I definitely want to kick it over to Prince, who is one of the members of what we're calling our Wequal Punks, which is our NFT collection. It's coming soon. Watch out. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with everything you said. I'm equally excited for all those reasons, right? I think that there's still a lot of stuff to figure out, because I think as an organization, there is elements of like hyper focusing or being careful in which direction like the ship is going, that if you open up the door for just kind of like everybody proposing different directions or ideas, it can get a little bit chaotic. So I think a lot of DAOs are still figuring that aspect out. But for the most part, I think that if you're able to curate the correct like set of individuals into the DAO, this should kind of like course correct by itself, right? As far as there's got to be. I mean, I think in my opinion, there still needs to be kind of like in the early days of the DAO, like a visionary leader that guides and moves the vision forward and is able to execute on that. But for the most part, I think kind of like one of the main pieces is that a DAO and its members should all kind of be able to simply communicate kind of like what their vision is, and that can act as kind of like as a guiding first principle in regards to when people try to sway the DAO into different directions via proposals.
Well, speaking of missions and first principles, like, could you give us an outline or an idea of what Pleaser DAO's main principles are? You do have a collection of NFTs that seem to be fueled by a form of activism or just a new renaissance culture. So I'd like to hear more about how you, how Pleaser DAO embodies those principles, or like in what way they're expressing those principles.
So, I think like on a really high level, and to be completely transparent with you guys, I think this is still work that like the DAO members and myself still need to do to kind of like get this messaging like down a lot better. But like on like a very high level, what we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of like become like the people's Louvre or the people's MoMA of the 21st century. And like, what do I mean by that? Is, I mean, clearly we have a thesis, a long-term thesis that we believe that NFTs or NFTs as art is going to be here, something that's going to stay and it's going to be here long term. So we do believe in all these like culturally significant pieces that we acquire. But with that said, when I said kind of like the people's MoMA of the 21st century, like another piece of that is we believe that a lot of these pieces that we acquire into our portfolio belong to the people and not just to kind of our DAO or one individual. So kind of like our business model as a DAO is we're acquiring these culturally significant pieces that we deeply believe in, but then we're also fractionalizing them and we're selling, somewhere between 10 to 30% of each piece back into community. And kind of like a core part of our model is trying to build communities around the shared passion and shared ownership of these pieces. So we've actually only done this once so far. I mean, we're a fairly new organization, but I think the case that you guys mentioned earlier is Doge, which is literally the first piece that we have ever fractionalized and released into the community. With that said, what type of pieces do we acquire? I mean, I think we're kind of like seeing ourselves as this kind of like future digital collective / museum. So for us, it's got to be culturally significant. But as you can see with our portfolio, this has gone in like different directions, right? Like the DAO started first from the people pleaser piece that sold for the Uniswap V3 launch, which for us, this was a significant piece because it represents a lot of the decentralized finance world and crypto. And also people pleaser at the end of the day is kind of like the namesake for our DAO, right? Like we were created around a group of individuals, common belief for that piece, and those individuals getting together in a Telegram group to create Pleaser DAO with, at the time, not knowing that we were creating this DAO and it was going to be such a huge movement with more members and money raised and new pieces acquired. So at the moment, it was just literally, hey, we want to buy this piece. We can't afford it with one person. So what can we do to afford it? Let's basically get a bunch of people together that do want to acquire this piece and own it together. And that's kind of how, like, the genesis story of the DAO and the namesake.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Yeah.
Very
So I
proposition.
think one of the things that we started talking about and getting into the details of any one DAO is impossible. The answer already I know is going to be, well, it depends on what you're trying to do with the DAO, but it's coming. It's like, how do you make a successful DAO, especially when it comes to the governance structure? So let's assume for a second that you have a community and a shared mission. It requires some money to make it happen. You have people supplying capital. You have people that are supplying, the technical expertise to build, right? I'd love to get your thoughts on, just at a high level, theoretically, what do you tell folks, not naming names, that are trying to do that, to kind of like be that North Star, if you will, for how to position?
So there's a few things, right? Kind of my takeaways, and to be honest, it's not like I've been working in DAOs for years, right? I think this is kind of like a relatively new experience for me and a lot of the people trailblazing, kind of like working in these roles and partaking in different DAOs. So it's all so new and it's all still being figured out. And me personally, when I first took on this role, like one of the first things I did was basically talk to other operators at other DAOs in crypto. And the reality is no one really has the answers. People are still figuring it out. It's, you know, it can be a shit show. It can be chaotic. It can seem really unorganized at times. But I think that kind of my takeaways, like spending a little bit more time in the industry and seeing what works and what doesn't. I think one of the things that does work pretty well is basically a lot of DAOs end up, there's contributors and there's non-contributors in each DAO, right? I think that it's not realistic to expect that every DAO member is going to be like a heavy contributor in the DAO from the get-go. So part of that is identifying, you know, how many contributors and non-contributors you have, but also for a lot of DAOs in the space that I'm in, there's usually like a buy-in price, right? Like people had to pay to get into the DAO. So it's a little bit different as far as like, you know, maybe they can be perceived as investors to some degree, but the reality at the end of the day is that there is non-contributors and there's contributors. Now, with that said, something that I've seen that's worked really well in the past and something that we've done ourselves is in the early days, I think it behooves the DAO to have kind of like an operational team or an executive team or a management team or whatever you want to call it, and have these people be basically the full-time paid contributors to the DAO that are in charge of basically on a day-to-day basis, driving the DAO mission forward and executing on anything that needs to be executed to get stuff done. And I think that giving this group of individuals, or, you know, in some cases it's task forces. So, you know, I know a few DAOs that have task forces. So to give you an example, would be like, in my case, it would be like there would be a curation and acquisition task force. Maybe there's a finance and treasury management task force. Maybe there's a marketing task force. So you kind of like start dividing like the core functions of the DAO into like smaller working groups or pods. But at the end of the day, I do think that it probably behooves a lot of DAOs to, from the get-go, have kind of like this executive or management team that can make a lot of the smaller decisions moving forward to kind of minimize the bureaucracy or the amount of, you know, because if you don't do that and you don't give these people some level of autonomy, I think you're kind of just, you can get stuck in this limbo state of like trying to seek consensus on every little thing that the DAO is doing. And I think that, you know, is problematic from a speed and execution perspective, and also problematic in the sense that not necessarily everybody that's in the DAO has the same amount of context or knows what's happening like on the ground level as the people that are operating it on a day-to-day basis. But, you know, happy to kind of dig into that deeper as you guys see fit or have questions around that.
Oh man, yeah. And I mean, I know we're recording for podcast, but my goodness sakes, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I just see so many. So I'll give you an example of all the connections that I'm seeing. I just met with a bunch of local homeschoolers because we decided to homeschool, and I left my work at the FDIC, a long tenure there, so I could do that. Um, but I was meeting up with these folks. I was trying to find local homeschoolers that I could collaborate with. Why? Because we have a shared interest. We have a shared mission. We're trying to help raise our kids and find cool opportunities to help educate each other. That's different in part because you don't need capital, right? You don't need a treasury to invest and build something like, you know, some kind of new decentralized application, right? And so you get this sort of community vibe that functions really well within homeschool communities because everybody is free to take initiative, right? And so they take initiative, and whoever wants to help, they create their pod. You use the word pod. That was like the first word you used, by the way, that half of our school could understand. That's not your fault. That's just the nature of what we're talking about. But they get that, and they get to decide to do that. What makes this different is that we're talking about collaboration within community where you're really trying to tie capital with labor and development. And that's where all of a sudden it becomes really important, because as soon as money's on the line, now everybody's like way more focused. Okay, what's going on here? Right? What's the value proposition? That's when it switches from being a collaborative community to dare I say it, you know, essentially it's kind of like an investment in some ways, right? Even though it's decentralized, it doesn't have a country. It's not technically a legal entity, right? So that's where this starts to get really interesting. But I think Prince, he was unmuting himself. I want to pause and let him share before you respond. I was more pontificating based on your comments.
Okay, yeah. Hello, Juan. So I was going to ask these questions about Blizzard DAO, right? So my question is, did you guys build on an existing protocol, or you guys start from afresh, a Blizzard DAO?
Say that again. Did we what from a protocol?
Like, did you guys build from a start? Did you guys start from afresh, or you guys built on an existing protocol or an existing DAO? For example, there are several DAO tooling that are available on Ethereum and on Polygon, right? So I was going to ask you if Blizzard DAO was built from the start, or if you guys built on an existing tool.
So let me know if this answers your question, but Pleaser DAO is created. So our token, so our governance token that we created after we like I said earlier, right? This whole thing started not as like this like crazy vision to create like the world's biggest digital museum collective. It really just started over a few individuals wanting to collectively own one NFT, and from there things kind of just took off. But to answer your question, we decided to build on Ethereum just because I think that's where kind of all of our members like that. This is I think we're ETH maxis at the end of the day, but also because in our DAO use case there isn't a lot of overhead with our decision to have built on Ethereum. And the reason why I say that is because like we probably have on average 1 to 2 proposals that are passed per week in our governance. And besides that, like there isn't, and even to vote on Snapshot, that doesn't take any gas, right? So we haven't really I don't know for what reason we would ever decide to build not on Ethereum.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Probably let me make it more clear. Okay, so you guys built your own protocol, or you use an existing tool. For example, you have Aragon on Ethereum, you have Perflex and all that. You understand? So, do you guys actually created your own protocol, or you guys use an existing tool?
No. So to answer your question, no, we did not create our own protocol. And if you think about, I think it's nuanced, right? Because it depends on what the function of the DAO. Our DAO is pretty simple, to be honest. I've operated a lot of businesses in my past, but this is from an operational perspective, there's not a lot of need for us to build a lot of technology here. And the reason is, what's our business model? We acquire NFTs or sometimes physical art, and then we fractionalize it with pre-existing protocols like fractional.art. And besides that, our governance is done with a tool called Snapshot. And yeah, it's not too, in our case, it's not too complicated, right? Like our tooling is basically, we communicate on Discord and on Telegram. We do our governance votes on Snapshot, and we use a lot of Web2 tools to do like project management. So we never, there was never this crazy level of complexity that required for us to build our own in-house tooling or our own in-house technology. Right now, we have one full-time developer working as a contributor in the DAO, and that work is being done towards building product for the Doge community, which is the first basically NFT that we decided to fractionalize. Aside from that, I think a DAO like the one that, a DAO like Pleaser DAO, it doesn't require a lot of in-house tech building or tooling or anything. I think that at least my vision and a lot of other DAOs that are kind of in the NFT curation collection space, you can do anything you want with the tooling that already exists in the DAO space, and that's without even really leveraging all the tooling that's out there. But we're still, I think, in a very early stage as far as how we govern and operate our DAO.
Okay, thank you for that. I was also going to ask another question about, the other time you were talking about the like a DAO having an executive team that can make decisions and all that, right? So in such a team in a DAO, how, are those the only people that are responsible for making proposals? And also, are other members of the team, are they able to like vote for when proposals are being made by the executive teams? So I really want to understand how that kind of structure, how it can work.
Good question. Good question. And I think these are all things that we're actually just now figuring out. And I think that talking to other DAOs, they're also figuring it out. And kind of, what my views on this are that if you don't have like rules around governance and how decisions are made and roles and responsibilities and KPIs and all these things, if your DAO lacks that, I think it's going to be really chaotic and disorganized, and it's just kind of going to seem like, like too chaotic from the get-go. So I think that a lot of DAOs, the long-term vision is to be fully decentralized and kind of have these like task forces or pods that kind of all operate autonomously. But I think in the beginning, what DAOs need is structure, and just kind of like any organization, right? Like what you need is structure. And what does that mean for me to have structure? Like to be like more transparent. In our case, we're basically building out like a DAO governance handbook that outlines what does the organizational chart structure look for us in this current stage? What are the roles and responsibilities of each task force? What's the roles and responsibilities and KPIs of like the executive or management team of the DAO? What are the roles and responsibilities of the advisory council of the DAO? So I think that's like, for me, kind of like this DAO handbook is an opportunity to basically lay out what like your mini little city looks like and how it operates and how it works. And obviously this is kind of like an ever evolving document that, ideally you should be iterating on and learning from and evolving on. But for the most part, I think, some DAO operators or some people that are building DAOs, they kind of ask a lot of questions expecting for all this to already exist and for it to be like a textbook somewhere where with like, hey, these are the rules, this is how this works, etc. And it's not really like that. I think if you're looking for that, you're not looking for the right thing. I think what you guys need to be focused on is basically creating and building out that handbook of how you guys want to operate, what this looks like to you guys. And kind of my personal opinion is that I think that in the earlier stages of like the life cycle of a DAO, it makes more sense to kind of have like, I hate to use the word centralized, but to have kind of like power being a little bit more centralized for the sake of velocity and speed of execution. Whereas, like to give you an example, in the earlier stages, I would be very adamant of having kind of like this executive management team or operational team or whatever you want to call it that is voted in by the entire DAO. But as the DAO evolves, I think that the kind of longer term vision is to make it more decentralized and eventually to kind of no longer need or have that like that management operational team. I do think that having kind of like a project leader or a project visionary or someone that's kind of constantly beating that drum and driving the vision forward and checking in on all the task forces and making sure that everything's going in the right direction. I do think that that's something that's very valuable in the earlier stages.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Juan, I'm curious to hear your opinion on the difference between basically, you created your DAO for a very specific purpose. You wanted to acquire a piece of art. You basically needed to pool the capital. And if I'm correct on my assumptions, you guys kind of like came up with the whole expansion of purchasing other art pieces and tokenizing them as kind of a after thought of the first purchase that you guys had assembled the DAO for in the first place. And I know you have experience with like the Bored Apes as well. And that tweet thread by Punk6529 really got me thinking this weekend about the use of NFTs beyond just, oh, I own this JPEG. And I'm curious about your thoughts on having an NFT as a shared membership into like a social club that has a specific purpose, and an actual DAO, which I believe would be more of like a business, like revenue generating focused purpose.
So it's nice to hear your voice, by the way. I don't think I've ever talked to you, but you know, we're in the same chat for a very long time.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that people that so like within the NFT space, there's like all these different trees or like legs or whatever you want to call it, or like verticals or arms. And I think, you know, if we're talking about like Bored Apes, which is like talking specifically about like the PFP NFT trend, I think people that describe that as just like a JPEG or an image or just like a digital flex, like a, you know, like a new age Rolex that people are showing off, I think they're kind of missing the mark. I think that's definitely a part of it. But at the end of the day, like if people ask, if I have to think about what the utility of owning a Bored Ape or owning a cool cat or owning a Subduck is, I think the utility is actually the membership. It's like the membership into a community of like-minded people that, you know, kind of are also trailblazing and building cool shit and figuring out how this space is evolving, right? I mean, I think you're seeing a big trend right now happening of like these communities starting to bridge into in real life events. You know, I think Bored Apes is kind of leading there with supposedly they're going to buy a club in Miami. And, you know, I think that, you know, in our case, we had a really big event in New York to kind of like celebrate the launch of Doge and bring community members together. So I think kind of just it's an innate human thing to want to belong and to kind of want to spend time with people that have like similar interests. And I think this has been happening way before Web3. You know, there's always been like communities and tribes online of like different shared passions. I think that when you mix in a token that appreciates into the mix, I think that kind of like opens up like a whole new set of incentive structures that didn't really exist before, that are really unique, and kind of rally a community behind the same thing to continue to building together and seeing where things evolve. So I mean, I think I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there, but I don't know if
No,
that
I
gets
love the rants. Man, I want long form Juan every time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, did I
Um,
answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking about that after reading that thread this weekend, and I've been thinking about it, and I shared it with Joe, and I I guess I kind of wanted to challenge him on his DAO and make him look into seeing if potentially initially if it was something that could be done via just an NFT like membership type platform,
Got it.
whereas like the DAO could be formed at a later point when there's like a specific need for capital to achieve a specific thing. But again, I don't want to speak for Joe. Like
yeah,
that's
dude, you're putting me on the
yeah.
spot in the middle of our podcast. Ross, we've talked about this. No, I love that. So actually, and to get to the point, I don't like the normal structure of organizations. I'm one of the most like innovative, more entrepreneurial thinking people that I've met. Say maybe you, Juan, like a few other people in our community. I do not like calling the shots. And a lot of the work that we're trying to do within Weequal Group, as these guys know, because Frank, so Vishal, he's our COO. He's operationalizing a lot of what we're doing. It's all about empowerment. It's about letting people know they can take initiative and they don't have to wait for permission, because that's the way that people are thinking. Like basically everybody that has a professional career in the Western world, or really across the whole world, they're conditioned to wait for somebody to tell them what to do. And part of that, it comes from the way that they're educated going up through like traditional schooling. It's like, here's what you do now, and then you execute on it. If you make the person who's in charge happy, they wave this carrot in front of you, and then that's how you move up in life and find security. The world's changing, and it
Very,
changed real fast. And like being able to unlock the creativity and the initiative and the entrepreneurial spirit of people everywhere, like this team in Nigeria that appeared out of the ether, if I may. I mean, wow, you want to talk about entrepreneurs? Like every single one of them is an entrepreneur. They're building on the space. They are driven, right? and it was impossible. It was basically impossible for me to find a collaborative opportunity with them until things like DAOs and blockchain all of a sudden boom. So no, there's definitely a revolution that's going on, and it's really, really good. Like this is a beautiful story. It's a story of empowerment.
Agree.
So, you know, in terms of the NFT, I mean, honestly, I need to learn more about this space. That's a big that's something that like I can't understand the world by myself anymore. Like for me to invest really well now, frankly, I need a team of extremely innovative people that can collaborate the way that they are doing in successful DAOs like yours. But yeah, feel free to educate me on the future of NFTs, but be sure to take into account one thing though. There's one issue that I have that's plaguing my mind when it comes to this space, and that is enforceability. There's a lot of talk in the NFT space about all the things that NFTs are going to do, and a lot of the things that people envision for NFTs doing are non-enforceable outside of the blockchain. And so like, you take like property rights or something. Oh, I own this. It's like, well, do you? I think that buy into that idea in the community that helps, but just try to address that key issue if you can in terms of the future of NFTs.
Um, you know, I mean, so an argument that you hear sometimes on social media oftentimes is like, hey, like like I can just copy and paste this like crypto punk and use it as my own Twitter avatar, like haha, like like you sucker, like you spend $400,000 on this like little image. And I think that, like some of the best responses that I've seen around that are, yeah, you can do that, but at the end of the day on the blockchain, there's one owner and there's only one person that can prove that they have ownership over this. So anybody else that just wants to like copy and paste it and use it, at the end of the day, like in my opinion, they're kind of just like spreading awareness about that one person's NFT that he owns. So, and honestly, like, I don't know if like the younger generation or the trailblazing generation really even cares about enforcement outside of the blockchain. Like, frankly speaking, like I know I don't. I know that like the NFTs that I own, I'm proud that I own them and I can prove that I have ownership. And if someone wants to kind of like copy and paste it and use it around, like that's kind of like just like promoting like the art that I own. So like I have absolutely no problem with that.
Okay, so I agree with you in one instance, and I want to start there, but then I also want to try to push the issue a little bit. That's okay.
Sure.
But if we start fighting and call each other names, we'll just edit it out. All right.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So I was doing some talks on crypto maybe 5 months ago, starting about 5 months ago, where I talked about the future of blockchain as I saw it then, although I need some updating. And I had real concerns about Bitcoin, and I still do. Like that's basically my play right now. My investing playbook on crypto is it doesn't really matter what I'm long, frankly, as long as it's on Ethereum and wait for Ethereum to flip Bitcoin as number one, because even though there is some innovation on Bitcoin and they're trying really hard to make it more accessible, to expand the realm of what one can do on Bitcoin, I have some pretty high conviction that it's going to lose. And so after that happens, I think that Bitcoin is going to suffer and not fail, but it's going to cease to be as powerful over religion. And the reason why is because having Bitcoin become second place would be like the equivalent of, Zeus walking up to, I don't know, what's another old religious deity, and
Hercules.
then, giving him a swift kick and then what. I mean, I'm sharing this with the school, so I need to tone it down a little bit. I can't be my normal Bernard Baruch. So, when if you're looking at just the actual use case of Bitcoin, and its interoperability, the fact that it's plugged into virtually every single exchange in the world certainly has a lot, but a lot of the value of Bitcoin is a religion, in my view, and that's not a bad thing. There are a lot of religions.
Yeah.
And I'm friends with tons of religious people. They're some of my closest friends. But it's not that, it's about faith. You have faith in it. It's really hard to have faith in something if it's losing followers. And a lot of the people that are buying into Bitcoin right now, it's like the 20th largest currency in the world. And that's really big, right? So basically, I don't really see a lot of area to go up. Mostly down, in my view, if that happens, right? Because there's like 11,000 other cryptocurrencies, and Ethereum is like this entire economy in and of itself, with folks like Pleaser Dao changing the world, right? So in terms of bringing it back to NFTs, here's the issue. I agree that if there's a lot of support and belief that the value of the NFT is the ownership on the blockchain, then it will have value in the real world. The problem is what happens if that starts to go down and there isn't as much, and the percent of people and their perceptions of it is very low in terms of how much of that value depends on being on the blockchain. Because at the end of the day, you don't really have a lot more to go on, if I'm correct in my understanding, than hoping that a whole lot of other people agree with you that the fact that it's on that blockchain means that it has value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to kind of give like a straight answer around that. But I mean, for me, NFTs as art is not any different than art on a physical canvas, to be honest. If anything, I think there's some characteristics that actually make it more appealing to me, as far as how long, I mean, there's a lot of aspects about physical art that people don't really consider, as far as, like there's maintenance that needs to happen to some of like the oldest masterpieces that you see around museums, as far as like, damage that happens to the original works, and painting that needs to happen on top of the original painting. And I think over time that only gets worse, whereas with something like NFTs, that's never like, they're never really like decomposing or like losing their original like first conceived stage. So I mean, for me, like in my, like how I think about things, it's not any different, to be honest. Like, what's the difference between to me, what's the difference between the Mona Lisa and like per se like the Doge? I mean, I think it, like in the last decade, it's one of the most culturally significant, like iconic images that has united, I don't know, hundreds of millions of people around the world into like a common belief, and it's something that's going to exist forever. Whereas the Mona Lisa, will it exist forever? I don't know. I think there's risks associated with a physical piece, and there's ongoing wear and tear. I mean, obviously I'm making like really, really crazy claims in regards to the traditional art world, but I'm also thinking like hundreds of years into the future here.
No, I love it. And I think that the fact that we're having this conversation, this is extremely valuable, because nobody knows. And I don't have high conviction anymore on the future of NFT. But I do think that there's some critical differences between the two. The first creation of the Mona Lisa was on a canvas. The first creation of the Dogecoin, that picture, was not an NFT.
Correct.
I think that's a rather important difference.
Correct. It was like a JPEG, right? Or whatever image was hosted on an original blog.
I mean, it was also a picture that like was something that they may have just grabbed from somewhere. Like the amount of time and effort that put into creating the first Dogecoin picture, it was just a picture.
Well, I mean, it's kind of one of these moments in history where, there's kind of like a butterfly effect, as far as some Japanese woman that really loves her dog decides to put these pictures up on her blog, and for whatever reason it may be, that image ends up getting shared on Reddit, and again, for whatever reason it may be, on top of that, that image ends up going viral and spawning this whole entire movement. Was that planned? Was that a part of like a master plan? Absolutely not. And I think that's what kind of makes it a little bit more beautiful too. And I think they're like what are memes to begin with, right? I think there's a whole conversation that can be had around that. And I've heard a lot of different takes in the last few months since I've been working on that project. But I think that, I don't know. I mean, it's TBD what's going to happen 5-10 years from now, but obviously we're making the bet in our thesis that we do think these pieces will be culturally significant 10, 20, 30 years from now. And as part of being culturally significant, I think that, at least we're making the bet that the value will accrue over like a big enough time like viewing.
Yeah. So I actually agree with you. I agree. I don't know about how much accrual. I think that the magnitude is the part that I have no confidence in trying to forecast. But the cultural significance of what you helped to accomplish at Pleaser Dao with the securitization of this famous NFT that made headline news across all these major publications around the world, to say that that's not going to be a culturally significant event and have some persistence in value, I think is ignorant. So I think it will. The challenge is how much in terms of valuation as an investor, but the reality that it has cultural significance, and the cultural significance is what drives value with, say, artwork. I mean, that to me is a slam dunk. That's the beauty, in my view, of Pleaser Dao. In my ignorance, I have a lot to learn, but yeah, no, I see that. I definitely see that.
Well, and I think there's a piece here that is maybe really undervalued. And like that piece is like, imagine if you walked into the Louvre and, that Mona Lisa that you see hung up, imagine if 20% of that Mona Lisa was owned by a community, and that community was constantly building more product and more like layers of what it meant to be kind of like what it meant to be part of that community that's so passionate about that piece of art. So I think that's one of the bigger aspects that shouldn't be undervalued here, as far as at the end of the day, like we fractionalized and sold X percentage of that piece to a community, and that community, in our hopes and in our eyes, is going to continue to stick around and build additional layers of product of what it means to be kind of a part of that community, and what it means to be a member of like this club of people that believe in kind of like the mimetic value of this piece and what it stands for them, right? So does the Mona Lisa have that? Maybe, I don't know, but it's definitely not on a Discord, and it's definitely not like a super active community that's constantly building and like getting together and like figuring out how to like continuously add value to what they're doing, and kind of driving that mission forward. So I think that's kind of also the other piece that makes it really unique. And also, I mean, I think that, at least my personal thesis is that, I don't know if you guys have read Ready Player One, but I think whether people like it or not, we're moving in that direction. Say again?
Sorry, I watched the movie twice with my kids too, man. It's one of their favorites. It's like, it's fabulous. Because it's kind of like their life at Weekly School. It's all virtual. We're trying to fix some of that. Do a little more actual physical relationships. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like sometimes people that don't understand the specific verticals of NFT, like PFP categories, I think sometimes just reading that book or watching that movie kind of like puts a little bit more context into it, right? People are going to be inevitably spending more and more time in these kind of like metaverse settings. And yeah, you don't think people are going to like pay to like buy like avatars, or pay to buy skins, or pay to buy tools? Like, it's going to happen. I think you're already seeing it happen, right? So, you're seeing it happen on Twitter, right? Like Twitter might be today like the place to like flex your artwork more so than any other place. And, I think there's validation in that statement just from like a week ago when the Twitter team and Jack Dorsey announced that they're going to have like a verification system for NFTs. So, Yeah, personally, I'm excited about that future to some degree, and I think that a lot of like NFTs as art as a category, because it's just a small part of like the NFTs as a whole. I think a lot of that is going to grow based on that, right? Based on the fact that people are going to have like these settings where they're going to like live like these other like very fulfilling lives that they have, right? I mean, everybody that I know in crypto, for the most part, spends an inordinate amount of time on Discord and on Telegram. And I think anybody that's joined some of these NFT communities that I think are particularly very strong has made friends from all over the world that they might have not met had they, not been part of those communities. So personally, I'm super bullish on kind of like, like I tell startup founders that if they're not hanging around in like the discords of NFT communities, they're really doing themselves a disservice, because this is how I think the future of building companies is going to be like, right? Where it's very community first and community centric. Whereas in the Web2 startup world, it was always like focused on, hey, we're going to have Google ads and Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And I think for a lot of these projects, just the idea of paying for ads to drawing new users is seen as something kind of like cringe-worthy or even like boomerish, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, so this is why I love talking to you. And if you ever want to come back, you are always invited, because I think that the way that you talk about community and it's how integral it is to value creation, the way that you compared the Mona Lisa and talking about, well, how many people are on Discords on the Ethernet, discussing the future and devoting time. What are the scarce resources today in this new digital economy? Time, attention, right? IQ, where are we putting it? I mean, I don't know what the chart is for Mona Lisa on that one. I haven't looked at it lately, but I'm guessing it's not a straight line up, right? And so the reality, I think, with what you're saying is just so evident, because you know who you're looking at right now? Like, you're looking at 3 people that I met just in the past 4 months that have been, they're some of the most exceptional people that I know. And they're from all over the world. And we all met on the internet, and we have a shared community, and we're building the future.
Yeah.
So I can't hear what you're saying and disagree with you. That's why I need to pay so close attention. That's why you're being recorded, so I can re-listen. But yo, Prince, come
Yeah,
on in
yeah.
here, man. Share your thoughts. By the way, I'm just gonna keep letting this camera roll because this is too good.
Okay. Yeah, I've been learning quite a lot from Juan. And I think what he just said about NFT is actually right, because number one, I think if you look at it from the sense that in the future, we are actually now in the future already. You're going to have more stores on the blockchain. You start appreciating the significance of NFTs. You understand? When you look at it this way, that okay, in the nearest future, almost everything, every platform, every system going to be working on the blockchain. It means that is when you start seeing the significance of NFTs and each picture and each frame and all that. Because by then you can only have just one of that particular picture or JPEGs or whatever you want to call it. You get, so when you start looking at, and if you start looking at it from that angle, you start seeing the importance of actually NFTs and all that. So to me, I think it's actually great. I've been trying to get into different communities, different platforms, especially on Telegram and Discord. That's where you have most bullish crypto fanatics you get. And from there, you can get to meet more people and learn much about, especially if you want to meet developers to know what they are doing. And you guys can actually plan together, work together in current project, in future project, and all that. So what Juan is saying is been really great. I think I've been learning so much from it, and I'm going to actually apply those thoughts in addition to what I have already and all that. Well, I really want to appreciate you. You've said quite a lot, and I'm really learning. So thank you.
No problem, dude. It's my pleasure. Sometimes I feel like the stuff that I've talked about is kind of common knowledge, but it's also because I hang around in Discord chats with a bunch of ducks and monkeys and lions all day long. So they probably get it really well. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that just the fact that we're having this conversation to me is kind of telling that it's still very early. But I think that kind of what's happening now with NFTs and with blockchain and with these like cartoon silly PFPs, I think that's kind of the future. It's the future where through collaboration and shared ownership and better aligned incentives than we've had in history, people are more willing and happy to basically drive value to an organization than they have ever been before, right? Does that mean that there isn't speculators in like also operating here? And does that mean that there isn't bull and bear markets? No, of course. Of course, I'm not saying that everything's going to be up only, but I'm definitely bullish on the culture side of things and seeing how things are operating and where they're going and what that could hold for the future as far as like I personally have front row seats to basically seeing all the Web2 employees of Facebook and Google and all these companies basically saying, hey, I'm ready to start joining Web3 companies and I want to start building this new future where it's community centric and it's collaborative and it's kind of not this old traditional future where some of the smartest minds in the last decade have basically gone to tech companies and have been getting paid really great salaries to focus their time on optimizing ad clicks. And, you know, I don't think that's been really fulfilling for a lot of people that are kind of our age and part of our generation. Have they enriched themselves? Yeah, sure, maybe. But, you know, I think as you guys know, if you guys hang out with Bernie here, that enriching doesn't just come from kind of like a monetary aspect by any means.
No, there's three kinds of capital, and a big chunk of that is relationships, human capital. I want to open this up to anybody that wants to join. At some point, we can edit out the end of it if this gets too crazy. But a lot of folks have stuck around here listening, and if anybody needs to go, Juan, if you have to go, the last thing we want to do is make you feel like you had to stick around too long, because we want you to come back at some point. But I'm happy to let anybody that wants to join in here, but we'll just edit out anything that doesn't that won't make it into the pod. That's totally fine. If you don't want to be in the podcast, just let me know. Podcast is over. We'll keep recording just in case it's magic. Just chill out and talk about this stuff because it's important. Like, this is so, what you're talking about with community and value, I'm feeling it the way that you are. The way that you're living it within Pleaser Dao and on Discord groups, I'm living it within what started with a school that my daughter was building, but that I was kind of doing on Twitter with IntuitiCon, but not really. No, it was the school. Like, Prince knows this. Like, he came in because we were talking about Weequal coin, but then we were like focused on the DAO and the coin's part of that. But my goodness sakes, this guy, he sees the community of the school and all these parents and the kids, like the whole school, the whole philosophy of the school is like a DAO. They get to decide what they're inspired by, and they take initiative and they collaborate and they go, right? And this guy, like Prince, just jumps on and I don't know if you saw, did you see, I'm not even gonna ask, don't answer. But like the demo day on Africa, you know, Prince came on in Nigeria. A blockchain developer in Nigeria shows up and is teaching my daughters about not just Africa, but like about the inflation issues in Nigeria and about blockchain technology. How on earth is that possible?
Yeah.
Isn't that shocking to anybody else besides me?
No, I think it's super valuable. It's amazing. And that's kind of where we're at today with technology and kind of the barriers that have pre-existed in our society are beginning to break down, right? Where opportunity is starting to be more evenly distributed. And I think this is amazing. And I think that organizations like this can only drive that forward. So I'm definitely super bullish on that.
Okay, well, if you were Mr. Weequal, then what would you do?
With what?
Well, there's an organization of international families and investors and entrepreneurs and angel investors that are basically, they have a shared mission. And that shared mission is that they try to exercise and grow that which makes them uniquely valuable to add value to the world. instead of spending their whole life being told what to do and being miserable and hoping they can retire. What do you do if you have a community like that, of folks that kind of get it, that they're not like parts in a machine? They are unique individuals. And because of technologies like Amazon and Spotify and all these different platform technologies that have drawn the cost of personalization down to near zero, all of a sudden the unique aspects of their personality, all their unique strengths, all their, like, if I can quote Naval Ravikant of Angel.co, their specific knowledge, all of a sudden the value of that specific knowledge can be leveraged to the world. There's 8.3 billion people in that world. All of a sudden they're uniquely valued to at least 10,000 of them. That's the community. How do I use blockchain to leverage that community?
I mean, it sounds kind of like your job is to organize and lead people into basically some sort of shared vision, mission that you guys want to try to execute on, right? I mean, I think that whoever tends to be at the forefront of all these DAOs that are operating, there always needs to be kind of like a leader role. And what's that leader role kind of doing? At the end of the day, they're kind of just organizing resources and making sure that that there's progress being made in the direction in which the DAO wants to go into, and beating that drum constantly, right? Like beating that drum, beating that drum, beating that drum.
So yes. Here's the issue though, is that you think about a DAO, right? And there's a mission. Well, the mission of this is about, it's about the individual. That's what makes this almost like a paradox. It's a community, but the community exists to empower the individual. And it started with my daughter during the pandemic. Like when Sume created Weequal School, she didn't even have to, like, I was working still, like my wife was working, everybody was working, all the parents were working. So it was her and like all of her neighborhood friends, and they all got together as kids and they're like, well, how do we want to learn? And it was, well, I learn really fast when I do X. And so it was, well, how about we build a school that enables and leverages people to learn and grow the way that they find best? So it's a platform that enables individuality, individual freedom. That's a very odd, do you see why that's a paradox? It's a little
bit.
But it's also,
it sounds like an educational platform at the end of the day, right?
Oh yeah, it's all learning communities now. I mean, it's learning communities, but with other stuff. Go ahead, Vishal, or Rishi, go ahead.
I had a question for Juan, actually. Would Pleaser DAO have been possible without having a DAO structure and keeping him? And what were the attributes of the DAO structure that made it all easier to set up this organization?
Would it have been possible without a DAO? Probably, but I think that first off, everybody that's part of Pleaser DAO is like, I would probably be like guessing here, but I'm gonna go out on the limb and say that most of them are like super ETH maxis and like tend to like live their entire lives on the blockchain, to the point where kind of like a traditional bank account is kind of like an afterthought, including myself, right? Like for me, a bank account is like where a very small amount of money lives for a very small amount of time before it gets either on-ramped into crypto or goes to basically paying for cost of living expenses. With that said, yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have happened without a DAO infrastructure. And why not? Because it was just so easy to do. I mean, literally, the combination of having these communication channels for people to talk that, already exists, right? Like Discord or Telegram, with snapshot governance based on being a token holder, with like probably the most important piece is having like a multi-signature wallet. That I think is the layer that enables trust, where, when we created this, people were sending X amount of ETH here and there to somebody's wallet that they never met before, just based on this trust that exists kind of sometimes in the ecosystem. But moving forward, I think that the multi-signature wallet is just kind of that layer of trust that, like, hey, nobody here is gonna, nobody's going to run away with like the treasury of the DAO, or in order to do so, basically 5 or 6 people need to be in cahoots. But with that said, also to set up like a legal entity and a bank account with what we wanted to do and wire money and operational agreements and like all these things, I feel like it would have taken weeks. It would have taken weeks to just to open a bank account. Sometimes in the U.S. can take a long time. To send money via a bank account can take a long time. So, I mean, kind of one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on DAOs is because of how easy it is to spin them up, or how easy it is to set them up. All you really need is like-minded individuals, a multi-signature wallet, and that's kind of it. That's all you really need to get started, right? Where in the traditional world, you needed like legal documents and like permission from my bank to send money to your bank and this and that. Like, what a freaking pain in the ass, man. Like, how are we, like, every time I use a bank, I'm just reminded on how bullish I am crypto in general. Like, why do I need permission when I want to send monies from my personal holdings to somebody else's? Like, to me, that whole thing is something that I think we're going to see change over the next few years. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be a really smooth transition, because I think there is kind of a like caution or worry from, per se, like the overlords that have been in charge for such a long time that are not necessarily going to love this. But the fact that literally a DAO can be started in like under an hour, like, to me, like, that's the future.
I've actually got a follow-up based on that. So, and just thank you for everything you've said so far. It's been an awesome discussion, awesome talk. Considering DAOs are such a new and innovative concept, or a new and innovative form of organization and governance, was it tricky at all for you and for other members of Please Your DAO to kind of get used to how this whole governance and organization system worked, or was it like a pretty seamless, like easy transition, or like easy start to the whole process?
Definitely not easy start to the process, just because it can be chaotic in general. And, you do need, like, at the end of the day, organizations do need elbow grease to move forward. Without that, it's just a bunch of people that maybe have tokens and have a shared belief, but without the elbow grease or people on the ground to drive it forward, you don't really have that much. But with that said, you have to take into account who the audience is, and at least the audience, or like the members of Please Your DAO from the get-go, they're all people that have already been trailblazing on like the Ethereum blockchain for years. Some of them have worked for some of the biggest protocols, so they're they're like DAO natives per se, right? Whereas that's not always the case. There are DAOs that are being created that, it's always easier to build a DAO with DAO natives or ETH natives, because to them, it's like, it's not new, right? Like, they understand and they buy into this more than anybody else. I think the challenge sometimes might be creating a DAO with non-DAO natives. And not that it's impossible, just that requires an additional layer of education. And to be honest, I think anybody that's kind of trailblazing in crypto or in DAOs, they've kind of committed a big part of their lives, including myself, to ongoing education of people, because that's what we want. We want more people to come into the space. We want more people to discover decentralized finance. We want more people to discover like all these things. And what's it going to take to do that? We're going to have to actually like work to like make that happen. And I think, we do that work by basically red pilling individuals, as we like to call it in the crypto world.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
What is that last term?
Okay.
Like from the Matrix, red pill. So you got to red pill.
Oh, red pilling. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Oh, it's all about red pill. Go ahead, Prince.
Okay, so I think what Juan just said is very, very important, because for me, I've been thinking, because for you to get more people into the platform, even apart from DAO, right, any decentralized platform, you definitely need to educate them. Because that's where the major challenges are going to come from, right? Now, for you to be part of the DAO, you need to start interacting with your MetaMask wallet. You need a DAO platform. If you're going to be using your phone, probably an Android phone, you definitely need to go through the DAO browser, right? If you're using your PC, you're going to definitely need to connect it to your MetaMask wallet, you understand? So I think the first step, especially in a community like ours, like Wiki, for example, the first important thing to do is to start educating the community, educating the family members and all that, for them to understand how this whole thing works, you understand? Because that, to me, is one of the major challenges, you understand, interacting with any decentralized platform. So that it's really important that we start educating families, start educating our communities, our circle of influence, we start educating everyone about how this whole thing works. Then another thing also I would like to say, make mention of, is about the structure. To me, the structure of any DAO is so important. And I believe that before you start creating your own DAO, you should at least write down what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and the way you want your DAO to be governed on a sheet of paper or on any writing board or probably on a smartphone or your PC, you understand? So you first of all need to look at, probably take some trust toward the people within your community, then look at the structure that you guys can go with. Okay, what do you think will work for this community and all that? Because each DAO is unique to its community and it's unique to the use case that is being created for, right? So I think that is so important also, that you know what you want to do, what you want to achieve with your DAO. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Agree, man. You're a king, not a prince.
Oh man, yeah, no, this guy.
I think on that point too, when I onboard like newbies into like the crypto world or NFTs or decentralized finance and all these things, like it's like you said, right? It's not simple. Like for me, like a MetaMask is like something that's so like, you know, it's like part of my everyday life. But somebody that's new having to use a MetaMask, like that's not a simple activity, or having to have self-custody over their crypto when they're used to third-party platforms to Coinbase, etc. It's not that easy. I do think it's super empowering, and just the concept of self-custody for me is like something that I deeply believe in. But I think also this makes me realize that we're super freaking early, right? Because the onboarding has a long way to go here. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be this complicated. It doesn't have to be this hard. So I think we're still multiple years away from this being kind of a thing where it can be adopted by the masses, just like the internet was. And I think part of that is going to be dependent on builders basically building better onboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think talking about onboarding, I've been working on in a kind of a platform. I'm working in a kind of a onboarding system on the blockchain with a couple of my friends. I think that might also help, because this is going to be more like data onboarding. For example, your name, your address, your probably if you're complicit like the US that mixes the social security numbers and all that, you get that way. But it's going to be like the decentralized way, right? That you can do that onboarding. And instead of using your Google or Apple ID, you can also easily use a decentralized platform or data that is being stored on IPFS on the blockchain, right? Yeah, so I'll be looking at that also. That can really help. When you start having a lot of platforms going through the blockchain, then you have the situation whereby everyone want to be on the blockchain, because now what they really want to make use of, it's on the blockchain. It's a dApp, you understand? So when people start interacting with all this, when more solutions are being built on the blockchain, then you start having more people that are going to be using these platforms. They're going to be so used to the centralized platforms. Like you said, yeah, it takes a couple of years from now, yeah, but I know we're going to get it, yeah, we're going to get it. Thank you so much, Juan.
No problem. Thank you for being the one that's building.
So I think we're gonna wrap up here a little bit, in part because I know Juan really loves to be helpful, and I think I promised this would only be maybe an hour, and we're way over. So we're gonna wrap up here shortly. I just want to give everybody a chance to share a final thought, kind of their own personal key takeaway, and I'll start with me, just so you guys, I can buy you some time. So for me, I think that certainly to some of my neighbors, and some family members, I've probably come across as as becoming a radically different person than I was pre-pandemic. And part of that is because I think technological adoption of virtual connecting the world, but then blockchain reducing cost of zero, so that collaboration globally is so incredibly powerful that I still can't quite wrap my head around it. But I think a lot of what this is enabling is actually the topic of what we're talking about across Weekly Group this week, which is this know thyself personalized economy. Like understand the value of the uniqueness of individuals and countries and families and stuff has become way more valuable because of this technology. There's a lot of different technologies at play, and I think that blockchain is a key part of that. And I think it's reshaping so many aspects of how we live. It certainly changed like who I interact with and who I collaborate with. It's changing how we organize institutions. I think it's changing the way that we learn and making everything increasingly personalized. But the fact that we can personalize it and collaborate with everybody globally in a way that's trustless now, the amount of value that you can unlock with that, I think is absolutely enormous, because people for 150 years have been suppressing, really for like almost ever, the unique qualities of individuals were not valuable until the software revolution allowed you to scale it. And then now collaboration is trustless. I think it's one of the most important and profound things that has happened to any living human today. But that to me is my key takeaway, is that DAOs, NFT, especially DAOs, I still need to learn more about NFTs, blockchain in general. What you said about communities and value is gonna be ringing in my ears all night. There, I'm done. Who's next?
All right, I'll go up next. Before I give any thoughts, I'd like to give a shout out to Chirag Biswas. He wrote an article on Dao. He is actually from Weequal School. He's only 16, and he made an amazing article explaining what DAOs and NFTs are. So I'd like to give a shout out to him, and please check out his article. It's in the Weequal Capital Twitter page. Now to my thought. I definitely find all this interesting. I still have a lot to learn and read up on before I develop any kind of conviction on either NFTs or DAOs. But the whole value proposition of both concepts and practices seem very compelling to me, especially DAO, because I have a very strong business background. My family lives and breathes business. Traditionally, ethnically, like our people like focus law on business, and seeing how DAOs are a way to somehow democratize business and allow people who otherwise wouldn't have had access to be able to set up a not legal entity, sorry, but like a somewhat official entity or organization to do whatever function they need to do. It's pretty incredible that we're getting to that point where we're creating structures that allow way more people now to be able to do business. And that's something I'm really excited to dig deeper into and study more.
Yeah.
And I also like to thank you, Juan Pablo, for this talk. It was amazing. You're a very eloquent speaker, and it was really fun to listen to. Sorry.
Yeah, so well, I'm far from a DAO native. I was only introduced to the concept of DAOs maybe 2 weeks ago, and so this is all completely new to me. But the fact that you're able to get people from around the world to organize and collaborate and be able to share their ideas and have their ideas lead to actions, and you're able to do that in a matter of hours. The setup can be done in a matter of hours. I think that should be raising anyone's ears, if that's even the right phrase. I think that should be getting people to listen, or to at least be curious to find out what this is all about, because this is something unprecedented, and the fact that it's already happening, and there's actual use cases for it already. I think this is something that people should be at least paying attention to and trying to learn more about. This was awesome. This was one of my favorite talks so far, and we've had a great lineup of people talking on these podcasts, but this was one of my favorites for sure.
I'll just go ahead and say, Juan, it's nice to put a face and a voice to the name. I know we've had a lot of fun in our whatnot conversations and the group chat and whatnot. So it's nice to be able to speak to you over voice. And I always tell Ari that me and Ari will be like, man, what Juan's done with the Pleaser Dao, it's like crazy, like a truly inspirational story. So you're killing it, man. And thanks for coming in here and sharing your story, because I love to hear it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to Juan and for coming out here to hang out with us. I really appreciate. I've learned quite a lot. And also I want to thank Joe for putting all this together, and I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. And also, I want to say another thank you to John because I've learned a lot. Now, there have been so many questions in my mind about, okay, how you can structure that, because that has been my main focus, the structuring of that, you understand? So I guess, and right now, having this conversation with you has really helped me to have a proper understanding. Like what you said, that so for a start, you might need to have something like an executive team. So that was a key takeaway for me, yeah, because I've been looking into that a lot, you understand? So that was the key takeaway for me. I really appreciate you. And I think hopefully we get to do this some other time also. I've had quite a lot of fun today. Thank you so much for showing up. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. On that note, a little last piece of advice for you, Prince, is a lot of DAOs that are kind of like up and coming, they tend to have like their handbooks hosted on Gitbook or Notion or whatever it may be, but they don't like hide it. It's pretty public, so you can definitely find like the inner workings or like the governance documents of how a lot of DAOs operate just by hanging out in Discord rooms and basically kind of like following the links till you find this, right? Like to give you an example, another DAO that I'm a member of, it's called Fingerprints Dao, and it's also kind of like an arts NFT curation DAO, and they have a lot of like governance documents that's kind of like lives on the internet, open for anybody to look at and see how they operate. And I think that's kind of the ethos of Web3, right? To build in an open collaborative environment, because it's all about, kind of spreading the word and teaching others about a lot of these innovations of technology so that more people can kind of learn about it and do it. So for me, being in this call today was cool just because I got to hear that me and my conversations with Joe are slowly spreading into different parts of the world, and more people are considering or thinking about these use cases and DAOs. And I think that kind of, for me, makes it worth my time. Another like last piece of like insight I would leave with you guys with is, personally, I'm seeing kind of like a changing landscape in regards to how people are being hired. And I think it really excites me in the sense that when I was growing up, things depended on who you knew, where you went to school, and kind of like your pedigree in regards to the opportunities that came your way. But I think in this new Web3 world that's being built, it's not about that. I work with people that are anonymous. So like literally, like I don't even, I've never even seen their LinkedIn or a resume or anything of that sort. But I think like in the Web3 world, people are being hired based on their contributions to a community, and not based on a traditional like, oh, you went to school here, you did really well in this interview, let me hire you. Like I see people every day being hired in different DAOs from all over the world, from all walks of life, from all ages, from all educations, that basically just found the community they identify with and they liked, and they started contributing as a member of that community. And I think that for me, that's kind of like the future of what we're going to see happen in this space, as far as like even the hiring is like ultra democratic in that sense.
Hey, Vishal, that goes straight into the next Week Will School promo video.
Yes,
that is what we live and breathe, man.
And
by the way, Mboya and Wei, who are leading our Weequal.app team with Sume, same thing. I didn't look at their resume. They didn't even have a resume. They could contribute, and they could demonstrate. And then that was it. I hired them, and then boom. They were the leaders of that whole team.
Amen.
This is it. Like the cost of showing that you know what you're doing, the cost to learn and the cost to signal knowledge has dropped to zero. And if you are late to that game, you are in big trouble. Dude, Juan, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
I appreciate everybody coming on here. You are invited anytime. And all you need to do is say the word if there's anything we can do for you.
Cool. Spread the Dao word and start reading up on it and researching it so you guys are more familiar with it.
Oh, we will. Yeah. All right. Take care. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Good
Take
night,
care.
guys.
Right.